Welcome to the Bluegrass Soccer Academy. My name is Chris Dunham. This is Charlie Hamilton. We are coaches, loving the game, and previously we've had a couple top 5 situations here, and today we're going to continue that trend. But today we're going to talk not about players or coaches, we're going to talk about the parents.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. This will be a lot of fun. You know, we had so much fun recording those, the top 5 rule changes, the top 5 things players do that drive us crazy. So it's only natural to dive in and do the top 5 things that parents do that drive us crazy.
And you know what? We love the parents.
Of course.
To be honest, we really do. We need the parents. Yeah. We need their support. And really, majority of the parents on our teams are perfectly fine. They have their own ways. This is more about some awareness. No different from the player situation here. We just want parents to see from a coach's perspective what's going on that maybe you're just not aware of or just didn't realize was an issue. And we kind of want to poke you a little bit, try to poke the bear and see how you go with that.
And I think that's the big thing. You know, yes, we want to bring awareness to it, but we want to do it in a fun, open way where nobody's going to be angry, nobody's going to be mad. It's going to be a fun conversation. And hopefully, if you hear us mention something that you as a parent know you do, you can kind of laugh along with us. But then also, it brings that awareness to, I didn't even know Coach didn't like that.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm guilty of this. There's things my wife has brought up to me saying, Chris, you realize you do this on the sideline? I'm like, stop it. She's like, no, seriously. In multiple games, you blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no. And so other people kind of backed it up. So, you know, maybe you just don't realize you're doing it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Maybe your spouse, maybe even your kid can say, yeah, Mom, you're completely guilty of A, B, or C. So
I think this would be, before you dive into your first one, I think this would be a fun podcast to listen to with your player. I think it would be fun to have player sitting along with you.
We should definitely have a family on board, maybe a couple families, and just sit back and let them critique each other, for a better choice of words there. But let's dig into this. Things that parents do that drive coaches crazy. My number one, arriving late or not at all with zero notice. How many times have I come to practice with preparation for X amount of players? The drills I have need that number of players at practice, and I have 2 players that don't show up. Didn't hear about it, didn't know about it. Oh, no, wait. Practice ends. I get on my phone. 10 minutes after practice started, they sent me a message saying, oh, by the way, we're not going to make it today. Come on now. We're better than this. We all have cell phones in our back pockets all day long. Yep. We can easily send your coach a 5-second message that says, can't make it today. I don't need an explanation of why you're not going to be there.
Correct.
I don't need a personal story. Coach, so-and-so is not going to make it to practice today. Sorry. See you next time. That's all I need to know. That way I can adjust my practice, and I can come more prepared for what's going on that day.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and just let you know that my number one as well is not marking availability. So very similar thing here.
And just so you,
go ahead.
We both use either a GroupMe app. I don't want to say certain people's apps that they use, but we use apps for group messaging.
Yep.
And some of those you're allowed to mark availability on there.
Right. Yeah, and so, again, mine is not marking that availability because, as you mentioned, and maybe parents just don't understand this, but most coaches don't just wing practice. You know, we have a plan, and my plan is based off of a 12-player roster. You know, if I want to do an 8v4 possession game, if I want to do, whatever it is, and then, as you mentioned, I have 2 players not show up, it really throws a wrench into not just that drill, but the entire practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like you said there, if I'm coaching, like for me, I'm coaching a U10 team, and we play 7v7, and I only have 9 players on my team. I'm already dealing with a small roster. And if I'm planning a practice where it's 4v4 plus 1, and that one doesn't show up, well, maybe I can't even do that drill now because I had either a transition in there or it's a one-touch drill for that number one. You know, we need every player at practice. And if you're not going to make it, please tell us as soon as you know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the second point that I love that you brought up is I don't need to know the reason.
Oh, no, I don't.
Just Johnny is not going to be at practice tonight, period.
Yeah, I don't need to know a life story of what's going on.
And maybe, you know, and I get it. People are busy. There's lots going on. Maybe you just need a night off. Hey, we need a night at home to regroup, get a kid to bed at 8 o'clock instead of 9:30.
Been there, done that.
And
absolutely.
You know, almost like a personal day. You know, hey, we got to.
Absolutely.
And that's fine. So I feel like a lot of times parents, you know, I got to have, hey, we're not going to be at practice because and then it gets into this big long-winded answer where I think as coaches, we just need to know, hey, we're not going to be there.
And preferably give us 30 minutes prior to practice, a minimum.
Yeah.
That would be perfect. And I think that the thing that drives me crazy the most is who doesn't have their cell phone in their back pocket, in their purse,
right?
An arm's reach away. And we all have these days where we got a million things going on. You've got kids got to get here and there and everywhere. We have bad days, we just forget. But it's the situations where it's that one parent where repeatedly they're not giving you notice,
right,
or the notice is after practice, and it becomes a problem down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I know from personal experience, marking that availability, and sure, things change, but marking that initial availability not only helps us out as coaches, but I know my team managers need that availability mark too, especially when we start talking about games, because, you know, coaching two teams at the same age group, you know, I need to know, do I need to pull a player from the other team to play, you know, because we only have 8 marked all of a sudden. So just marking that availability, being very intentional about, hey, we're going to be there. Hey, we're going to be there, but we're going to be 10 minutes late. We're going to miss your warm-up. Or, hey, we're going to be there, but it's Wednesday night, and we go to church on Wednesday night, so we're going to pull her 20 minutes early. Now, all those things are fine. I think the frustrating part is when we just don't know.
Very frustrating. Extremely frustrating. Well, since our number ones are kind of the same, I'm going to move on to number 2 here.
Yes.
And this is, I think more parents do this without realizing it. It's yelling at your kid during practice.
Yep.
It's the reason why you and I love having a closed practice.
Yes.
And for any listeners that aren't aware of what that means, a closed practice means no parent is allowed on the sideline. In fact, my rule is, the layout of our field is you got to stay up on the hill by the parking lot where they can look down and watch practice from a distance. And it eliminates that problem. And the reason why this is a problem, and I'm going to be very straightforward with this, when you're yelling at your kid in the middle of practice, you're not helping in any way.
Right.
You're becoming a distraction. Now your kid's worried about pleasing the coach and his parent.
Yeah.
And he's got 2 things he's got to worry about pleasing during practice. And then he probably has to deal with that on the way home, because if you're yelling on the sideline in practice, you're probably giving those discussions on the ride home. And that child, regardless of what age they are, doesn't need that added stress.
Right.
Let me deal with the problem. Maybe what you're yelling at, in my eyes, isn't worth being frustrated about. And if I'm not yelling about it, why do you think you need to yell about it? If they're not hustling or they're making mistakes, that is my job. That's why I'm being hired or paid, or whatever that position may be, volunteered. That's my expertise.
Yep.
Let me be the expert on the field. I don't care if you are a Division I player. You don't know what I'm discussing in this practices. Let me handle that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. We are the coaches being paid. And so we don't want, in that moment, we don't want a player does something wrong that they know, they know they've messed up. And their first reaction goes over to that sideline to mom and dad.
Oh, I love that you just said that. Thank you.
And so and you're right. Closing practices is the answer to that problem. But I know that there are some clubs that don't allow that. We're lucky enough to be a part of a club that does allow us to do that. But and I know that there are some coaches that just for whatever reason refuse to do that. They like having mom and dad there. And to each their own. But I just know that when I first came over to MUSA, Madison United, here in Richmond, and closed that practice time for my teams, I didn't get a ton of pushback from parents, but there was some of that initial, why are we closing practices? But once you explain it to them, just like you and I have done on this podcast, once you explain it to them, and then once you start to see it develop on the field, you're like, oh, my kid did just need me to hush.
If there's one thing that a closed practice prevents, just like you said, it prevents the parent from getting in the way.
Yeah.
And I have coached soccer for almost 20 years, and there has never been a time where a parent has yelled at their kid. I'm like, thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that. I really appreciate you stepping in and taking over. I have never thought that. Please understand you are not helping at all.
Right.
Let us do our jobs.
Yeah. My second one, my number 2 is when a parent comes to us without consulting the player, without talking to the player. This actually kind of ties into what we talked about last episode about, having the player come to us first. But I've had situations, and I'm sure all coaches have had situations when a parent shows up, and maybe they're not in your face angry, but they're upset about something, and I had no idea, And
to add on to that before you continue, the player has never expressed frustration. The player has never come in upset. The player has never had conversations, but the parent comes in.
Right. And then to tie in with that, the parent is upset. Let's just say, let's just go with playing time. That's usually an easy one to go with. They're upset about the kids' playing time, and that child and I have discussed playing time, and that player knows why he or she is not getting the playing time or not seeing an improvement. They know why. And I can look at the parent and say, have you talked to your child about this? And they're immediately, no, I wanted to talk to you. Well, no, you don't. Your child knows. Talk to your player. Because I think a lot of that would solve this problem. Most coaches, when they do something, whether it is benching a kid, whether it is promoting a kid to a starter, whether it is decreasing a player's minutes, whether it's making a kid run extra after practice, whatever it is, most coaches don't just do it to do it. We do it and we say, hey, look, Dunham, I'm going to start player Y over you on Saturday, and here's why. And so, again, that goes, your big thing the last couple of podcasts has been open communication. And that just goes back to simply for mom to look at you and go, hey, why didn't you start today? Because you know the answer.
100%. And this may ruffle some feathers here, what we're discussing here, but when a parent comes in, they're making it their problem when it's the player's problem. And it may not even be a problem to the player. And just like you said, maybe there's already communication going on. If you're not speaking to your kid, then you really don't know what you're arguing.
Right.
And maybe you're out of the loop. Please have that discussion, because maybe that kid is like, you know what, coach? Let me backtrack a little bit. Maybe the coach and the player had the conversation of, hey, you're going to be more of a role player now, and this is what your goal is going to be in game to game. And that player doesn't have the discussion with the parent, and now they're arguing with the coach. Well, maybe the players decided it's not about me. It's about this team. It's about winning. It's about our game plan, and I'm behind that game plan 100%. But instead, the parent is saying, my child comes first. They deserve special treatment. Why are you holding that from them? This isn't right. Yeah. And so there needs to be open communication is so key in this topic right here, where I think a parent needs to take a step back and say, all right, how big of a problem is this? And do I need to approach the coach first, or is there something else going on?
Yeah. And I have had multiple moments when I've had a parent approach me. I just thought of something I could add to my list. But I've had a parent approach me immediately after a game, which, by the way, parents, don't do that. Do not approach a coach right after a game or right before a game. Give us some time. But that's another topic.
Another topic.
When a parent comes up to me and says, why didn't you start my son today? And I can say, hey, son, come here. And say, okay, mom asked me that question again. And then mom says, why didn't you start my son today? And I can say, why didn't you start? Thank
you for doing that again. You're killing it right now because, again, the parent left out the kid.
Right.
I'm going to make this very clear. The child, regardless of age, has every right to decide whether something's a problem for them or not.
Yep.
And if the parent is just automatically making it a problem, then they're not discussing things with their kid, right. And that's a big issue.
Absolutely.
But like you said, that is a massive topic that we could go off for hours on.
Right.
So moving on here to my number 3, and coaching or discussions with their child that contradicts the coach and the team's game plan. I've seen this more on, I guess, middle school, approaching high school age, a little bit in the youth, where a parent is saying, I don't care what the coach says, when the ball comes to you, you go score.
Yeah.
Or I don't care what that coach says, boot that ball down the field, get it on their end now. Or maybe it's, hey, when the other team has the ball, go get that ball right now. Well, maybe that's not the game plan that the team has been working on. Maybe they're working on working out of the back, up through the midfield and into the attacking third. Maybe they're playing a low block where they're not doing a high press and they're not trying to win the ball in the first 5 seconds. There's so many different ways to coach this game that maybe just because you have one perspective doesn't mean you're right or wrong, and the coach's is different doesn't make him right or wrong. It's just what they're training to do. And if the team has one overall game plan and there's one parent pulling that kid out of that game plan, you are really going to disrupt that team's performance every game.
I love this conversation. I love that you bring this up. My number 3, too, I'll go ahead and say it, was coaching from the sideline. So, again, very similar ideas here. But you're absolutely right. Again, you have to trust the players. You have to trust the coaches that, we're all doing a job. And for me, maybe we are working. I do a high press most of the time. I run a high press, especially at U12, because I think, we can get into all that, but I run a high press. What I mean by that is, as soon as the opposing team plays the ball out of the back, whether they play it to a wing or the goalkeeper plays it to a midfielder, I want my players immediately on top of the ball. Okay? And so what that means is that if I'm high pressing, I'm expecting players behind me to high press as well. And so when I have mom on the sideline, especially when the ball is closer to the sideline, so they hear mom and they can't hear. I'm pretty loud, but they can't hear me anymore. That's when it becomes a problem, because we're working on these things. And again, it almost goes back to the closed practice portion of it, where we're working on these things at practice. That player knows what they're supposed to do in this moment because we have practiced it. And if you start yelling at that player to, back up or go get the ball, or, everybody's favorite, kick it, right? That, more times than not, that player is going to listen to you because you are mom or you are dad. And so they're going to listen to you. So just really making sure that when you are watching, whether it is a practice or a game, that you are not contradicting what a coach has implemented for that game plan.
And I think this is a great topic here because we've discussed this before here recently, is sometimes parents are just getting in the way. And if you aren't sure what the game plan is, text the coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ask them before practice or send them an email. Hey, coach, what's your game plan so we can discuss it in our house? Or what's your strategy that you're teaching the kids so I have an idea of if I see something in a game, I know what's going on here.
As a coach, I personally would love that
text. It would be amazing. When you have players and parents that are locked in, it really builds a nice foundation there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so my number 3, again, was kind of that coaching from the sideline, so I'll let you go ahead and dive into your 4.
So number 4, this one makes me laugh because it happens more than it probably should. A parent that asks a question I just answered.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it be in a parent meeting or in a group chat or a group text. Perfect example, we had a game. We have that app set up, and you have your whole schedule set up, and it has the location, the game time, but it has your uniform, which you're going to wear. Well, the day or the morning of, my team manager had a discussion, and there was conflict with the team colors. And so the team manager sends out a message, hey, mistake in the uniform. We are going to be wearing gray, gray, and gray today. See y'all later today. I'm telling you, 2 minutes later, a parent said, so we're not wearing blue?
And again, we can laugh because these things happen. And I hope those of you listening are laughing along with us because we've all seen it.
Yes.
And we've all been that parent before too.
Yeah,
where,
absolutely.
But yeah, it's one of those things where just like we ask the players to pay attention to detail, just like we ask, player, hey, are you listening to me? Are you focused on what we're doing here?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with mamas and daddies too. My number 4 actually kind of ties into my second one with about not consulting with the player. This one's almost not consulting with the coach. There are going to be moments where a parent and a coach need to have a conversation. And maybe it needs to be a private conversation. But my number 4 is when a parent decides to immediately go over the head of a coach. They're going to go to the director of the club or the director of coaches, or they're going to go to the athletic director on the school side of things without even trying to discuss the problem with the coach. And I know parents have their reasons for doing that. But again, more often than not, if you would just make an attempt to have that conversation with the coach, even if it doesn't get worked out in the way you want it to get worked out, it's going to make the future a lot easier to handle.
Yeah. The way I see this is an individual throwing this over the fence. They don't want to deal with the issue. They want somebody else to fix the issue.
Right.
And to be honest, it probably won't get fixed because the DOC, the AD, they know the coach. Whether he's been there 20 years, 5 years, versus whatever it is, they're more likely to back their coach up.
Yes, great point.
Not that they're not going to listen to what the parent says. If it's a massive issue, they're going to get involved. But if it's an issue where it's playing time or there's issues with something in practices or maybe there's bullying going on, I mean, of course they're going to try to take care of the issue, but to me that's just throwing it over the fence. If you're not comfortable confronting that coach, send them a message.
Right.
We're in a day and age where you don't need to have face-to-face contact. And if you just want to bring some awareness, do that first.
Right.
And if you don't get a response that you like, then maybe you can take it over their heads.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the point is at least attempt to work it out with the coach first.
Absolutely.
Because as soon as you make that leap without attempting to make, now all of a sudden the coach is going to get defensive. And like you said, I think you bring up a great point. More times than not, the athletic director or the director of coaches is going to side with the coach anyway. So it's better to, hey, coach, I know my player has asked you about being picked on at practice. My player has approached you a couple times. It's not getting any better. How are we going to handle this moving forward? And now you and I can have that conversation about what is my plan to make sure that stops moving forward. And then, again, in that moment, you can say, all right, I don't like your answer. I'm going to go talk to your DOC.
Yeah, and I think another point or another perspective of this is when you go over their heads, you're talking to an individual that's not aware of any situations that's going on here. And in a world today of needing instant gratification, you're probably not going to get an answer right away.
Right.
And you're probably going to have to wait a couple weeks to get responses back. That guy's going to have to do an investigation or some interviews. He may have to get back to you. You're not going to get the results that you want in the time that you need. It's better to just go to the coach and get it done first.
Absolutely. Yep.
So moving forward to my final number 5 here. This is kind of a big deal here. I don't see it a lot, which is good, at least not in our area, but I have seen it. Starting an argument with a coach or a ref in front of everyone, causing a scene. Maybe the game just ended and the ref made some bad calls, and a parent runs across the field and gets in some referee's face. First of all, unacceptable.
Right, absolutely.
Second of all, you're about to get yourself arrested because certain states, and people need to be aware of this, there are certain states that if you physically assault any licensed official, it is listed as a felony.
Yeah.
And that just means putting your hand on them.
Right.
It doesn't need to be some violent attack.
Right.
They are protecting officials because they are not getting officials to come back year after year. Outside of that, same deal, running across the field to get in a coach's face about, why didn't you start my kid? Why isn't he getting playing time? I've seen this many times where, we tied a game 1-1, and I was an assistant coach at this time, and we're walking across the field, and the players all around us saying, oh, man, good game, or whatever, and this parent comes out of nowhere arguing why his son was taken off the field. Mm. And it's really frustrating because now the kids are seeing this. That player's probably humiliated. Yeah. And what the parents need to realize is when you're doing this and creating a scene, the child is going to get the blunt of this because now the kids are talking about it in school. The players are talking about it at practice. Yeah. And what's the player going to do? Is he going to defend his parent? Is he going to laugh about it? Is he just going to suppress it? There's a lot of situations here where this becomes a really massive problem.
Yeah. And your last point is the most important part of this problem. You're angry at a referee, you go and blow up, or you're angry at a coach and you go and have this argument and you move on. Maybe the referee moves on and maybe the coach moves on. The person who doesn't get to move on in this situation is the player.
Especially when they're middle school and high school. Yeah. Boy, oh boy, are they going to get some peer pressure.
Yeah, and they're going to hear about it and it's going to become a joke. Did you see Dunham's mom at practice last week or, after the game last Saturday? And they're going to talk. And unfortunately, they're going to talk about it until the next thing happens. So I think you're right in, I know there are intense moments in games. We all know that. But we have to be the adults in those moments.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that is a great reminder, a great kind of, okay, I'm the adult here. I understand that my emotions right now are very high. I'm very upset, but I need to get home. I have a 24-hour rule on my team after a game. So really, if we play Saturday, I don't have conversations with parents about that game until Monday. We have a 24-hour rule because my kind of thought is everybody can be mad about something in the moment. But then once you give your body some time to reflect and relax and you remove yourself from the situation, a lot of times in 24 hours you see that, that really wasn't that big of a deal. So I think that one is so important. And then the second thing that you brought up at the very beginning of your argument is the referee shortage thing, folks, is a real thing. Games are being canceled. games are being moved and changed because we don't have referees. And these varsity level games are all of a sudden going from 3 refs to 2 refs. And all that's going to do is create problems on the field. And so we have to make sure, and we could have this conversation with some coaches as well, and with some players as well too. But we have to make sure that we are treating these referees with respect.
Yeah, and I want to back up on this. I was reading an article actually just last week about the referee shortage. And here in our state of Kentucky, they've had a drastic shortage over the last 10 years. So I think 10 years ago, there was around 4,500 officials for all sports. And I think this article was written back in 2019 that they are 1,000 officials short today.
Wow.
When more kids are getting involved in sports, and these referees are saying, I'm not getting paid enough to deal with this.
Yeah.
And nor should they continue being, berated in a game because they're making calls that they think is great. And let's be honest here, we're not dealing with professionally paid officials. These guys have day jobs. They've got families.
A lot of times they're kids. A lot of times they're high school students.
And I'll tell you what, nothing irritates me more than a parent jumping on some 15, 16-year-old kid that probably just got their license because they didn't make a call that they think should be called.
Yeah.
I think the officials need to have more authority to have a shorter stick to say, I've had enough, you need to leave.
Yep.
And if clubs can do this, they need to start having patrols in their parks.
Right. I think that's a great idea.
And saying, hey, we got a guy here ready to take you off the field. If you want to be arrested, that's fine. But if we don't fix this problem, we will not have officials, and you're not going to have any teams to play on anyway.
Correct. Absolutely.
Anyway, another discussion we can have hours of discussion on. But to me, this is a concerning topic here.
My number 5 is one that's really important to me. It's why I saved it for last because I want to spend a little maybe extra time talking about it. But it is, again, something that parents do that drive me crazy. And I don't think they're doing it maliciously, but grilling your athlete immediately following a game. We've had to drive 30, 45 minutes to a game. They get in the car, and they know that 30, 45-minute drive home is going to be you, Dad, analyzing every aspect of that game. And they don't want to do that. Just especially in those moments where, we have kids today where confidence is at an all-time low. And so even when a coach thinks, man, Sally played fantastic today. If you ask Sally's going to be like, oh, I played okay. So those moments in the car ride home, I think, are so important. And I think grilling and just, how come you didn't shoot that ball? How come you didn't make that pass? Or what were you thinking on that cross? Why didn't you get back and mark up? Those types of conversations can be so detrimental to a young athlete.
Yeah, this is an important topic here for the player and the parent here. So I'm going to give you the role I put on myself. So I have a 9-year-old and I have a 19-year-old stepdaughter, and they've all played soccer. So as being a coach, I have a thing where I'm analyzing the game as they play, and that's just how I'm made. And, of course, I want to critique their game. But my rule is when the game's over, we're shaking hands, we're telling everybody good games, and we're going to the car, chatting with the parents and whatever. When I get in the car, I'll turn and say, hey, why didn't you do some of this? What was going on with this? Or how'd you feel about this? When I leave the parking lot, that conversation is over. And we're talking about play dates or grocery shopping or you got to clean your room up. When I leave that parking lot, that discussion of that game is done.
Yeah.
Especially at the younger ages. When their game is done, they're probably already talking about wanting to go to McDonald's.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And it's not that they don't care that they won or lost. It's that their minds are different. They're not adult where they're going to think about every single play like we do. And so that's been my rule, and I think it's done us pretty well. And I'm not in there yelling at him. We're having a discussion. But if you can put a rule to yourself, when you leave that parking lot, that doesn't mean you sit there for 30 minutes and have a conversation. You go through your normal routine, you put the key in, you go, and you start talking. When you turn out of that parking lot, what are we doing now, folks? We're going to get food. We got to get groceries. What do we got to do?
I love that. And I've even, in my parent meetings and things like that, even said, hey, we're going to have 3 questions. And our first question when we get in the car is going to be, did you have a good fun today? Did you enjoy playing the game of soccer today? And sometimes they're going to lose 5 or 6 to nothing, and so that answer is going to be no. And that's okay. But that's going to be our first question. Hey, did you have fun today? Our second question that my parents ask, or that I hope my parents ask, is, what is one thing you thought you did really well today?
Yes, that's a great question.
Because now that conversation, did you have fun? What did you do well? All of a sudden, that conversation is a positive conversation. And that kid isn't thinking, oh, I'm going to be screamed and yelled at the whole way home. Tell me something you did well today. And if they can't come up with anything, then as the parent, you need to have something. Hey, you made a pass to Johnny today across the box that was awesome. That was the best pass I think the whole team made the whole game. Having that positive. And then after we got everybody feeling good, now you can have that conversation of, hey, what do you want to work on next week at practice? What do you think you need to improve as a player the next week at practice? And within those 3 questions, what you're going to find is you talk about the game. They're going to talk about the game. And that's what you want. You want the athlete, the player, talking about the game. You don't want the player sitting in the back seat listening to dad, who a lot of times has never played a game of soccer in their life, telling you what all you did wrong that day. So I just think having those 3 questions, they're very broad, they're very simple, the athlete knows they're coming, and it's just real simple to have those conversations.
Yeah, I think that's so important here. And let's be honest here, there's nothing wrong with some constructive criticism, but that constructive criticism also has to come with some praise. Yeah. And let me add something here to this conversation here, that in today's world where we want instant gratification and everyone's focused on wins and losses, just because your team lost doesn't mean they played a bad game.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, how many games have we dominated and lost 1-0? Yep. Or it's back and forth, and they scored 2-1 with 2 minutes to go in the game. Things happen. But just because they lost doesn't mean someone screwed up. Maybe it was just a lockdown, nail-biter of a game, and they need to understand, the parent needs to tell their kid, hey, you guys fought, and that was amazing.
Yep.
Let's just go home and chill out.
Yep. And I love that, because believe it or not, one of my 2011 teams dealt with that all fall season, where there were most Saturdays we walked off the field knowing we were the better team, but we walked off with a 1 or 2-0 loss because we couldn't finish. And that's nobody's fault but mine. We got to work on finishing. And so being very open about that, because that is hard for that 11-year-old player to realize, what do you mean we lost but we played well? No, we didn't play well because we lost. If we would have played well, we would have won. And it's hard for that 11-year-old brain to grasp that. And so as the adults in the room, again, we have to make sure that is set for them. Because if we don't, we have these players where that question of, did you have fun? That question is never going to be answered with a yes. And that's when it becomes a problem. I have coached athletes, and I have coached athletes recently that they can score 2 goals and they can have 2 assists and we can win a game 4-0. But after the game, I can tell something's going on, and you have that moment where you grab them and say, hey, you just played a great game. What's going on? And then their mind goes, I hit the post on that one shot, and that's what my dad's going to be on me about on the car ride home.
Yeah, this is important here, and I think it's important that we have this conversation here. We're continuing to discuss this, but there's a statistic out there that says kids that start sports at a young age a vast majority of them quit by the age of 13. And one of the main reasons is they're tired of their parents berating them.
I'm sure.
And it's sad because some of them probably have pretty good futures. Right. You and I being high school coaches, we've had kids that, not just from our school, but had opportunities to go play in college and said, I want nothing to do with this sport. My parents have ridden my butt for years. I played at a high level, and I'm just done with it.
Yep.
And that needs to be recognized by parents, that there's an effect that's not immediate. Yep. And it's something that builds over time. There could be resentment there as you get older. You know, some kids, when they think about soccer, they think about some of the worst times of their life, or any sport in general, because this isn't just happening in soccer. But parents need to understand that everything you say, they're listening.
Yeah.
They're taking it in. Either they're expressing something or they're suppressing it, but over time, it's going to start building some effects to them, whether it be positive or negative. And if you're not giving any positive reinforcement, they're probably going to fall into one of those statistics of dropping out.
Absolutely.
Well, Hamilton, we've had a pretty good list here, I think.
Absolutely.
Some fun, some pretty serious,
Yep.
But all of them, I think, are valuable for parents to look into. Any final thoughts that we've talked about here?
No, just, again, giving our listeners the opportunity, jump on our Facebook page, we jump on the YouTube channel, and I'd love to hear from players. What are things that maybe us as coaches don't even know that mamas and daddies are doing again, we kind of titled this Things Parents Do That Drive Us Crazy. So players, we'd love to hear from you about things that your parents in your life do that drive you crazy.
Thank you for joining us today. I am Chris Dunham. This is Charlie Hamilton, and this has been the Bluegrass Soccer Academy.